Welcome to the Podkey summary of Enhance the Accessibility of Your Reading app from WWDC 2026. This one is all about a very specific corner of app design that ends up making a huge difference in real use. How text behaves with VoiceOver, Speak Screen, and Apple's reading tools. The big theme is pretty simple. If an app treats text like real, navigable text instead of a pile of separate visual elements, people get smoother reading, better selection, and way less friction moving through long content. And a lot of the best advice here boils down to one very healthy instinct in software. Use the system stuff when you can, and get custom only when you truly need to. One of the most practical upgrades is in text navigation across separate paragraph views. If a developer implements accessibility, next text navigation element and accessibility, previous text navigation element on each paragraph view, VoiceOver can move straight from the end of one paragraph to the start of the next. That matters, because without that link, users can hit the end of one text view and just get that dead-end sound, which is basically the app saying, "Good luck from here." So instead of each paragraph behaving like a tiny isolated island, the reading experience becomes continuous and predictable. On the Swift UI side, there's a parallel approach with the accessibility linked group modifier, available starting in iOS 27. The idea there is to give multiple text elements the same ID and namespace, so they behave as one linked reading flow, which brings Swift UI much closer to the UI kit model for this kind of accessibility navigation. The next piece is continuous reading across pages, and this is where the causes page turn trait comes in. If it's applied to the final text element on a page, Speak Screen and VoiceOver can automatically move to the next page once the current one finishes. So a paginated layout stops feeling like a series of little traps where the user has to keep manually swiping just to continue the same sentence thread. When that trait is paired with the accessibility scroll action, the page turn can happen without any extra user input. That's what creates the audiobook-like read-all experience for long-form content, where the technology gets out of the way and the person can just keep listening or reading. There's also a clever use of custom edit rotor actions. By overriding accessibility custom actions and assigning the edit category, developers can surface contextual actions directly inside VoiceOver's edit rotor. A good example is something like a save recommendation action for selected text. Instead of hiding that function in a visual toolbar and hoping somebody finds it, the action becomes part of the workflow a VoiceOver user is already using. So they can select text, switch to the edit rotor, and trigger that custom action entirely through VoiceOver gestures. It's one of those changes that sounds small in code and feels big in practice, because discoverability is half the battle with accessibility features. Now, if an app uses custom rendered text, things get more complicated fast. Maybe it's showing scanned handwritten pages or doing advanced typography that doesn't fit inside a normal text view. In those cases, adopting the UI text input protocol on the accessibility element is the path to restoring the full text experience. That means line-by-line touch exploration, rotor-based navigation, selectable text ranges, and all the interaction patterns people expect from native text. But this is not a light lift. A full implementation means handling geometry calculations, selection recs, text in range, and supplying a tokenizer, so the system understands how the text is structured. Once that's done though, the custom view can behave essentially like a native UI text view from the perspective of assistive technologies, which is the goal. That tokenizer piece deserves its own moment because it's easy to gloss over and it's actually critical. Subclassing UI text input string tokenizer lets developers define what counts as a line, a word, a sentence, or a character in layouts that don't follow the usual rules. If the text is non-standard and the tokenization is wrong, VoiceOver's rotor granularity can get weird really quickly. You end up with missed boundaries, awkward jumps, or navigation gaps where users can't move cleanly through the content. A custom tokenizer fixes that by teaching the system how this particular text is organized, so navigation at different levels feels accurate instead of approximate. There's also a broader platform angle here with Accessibility Reader. Since iOS 26, apps can add a control center shortcut that opens their content in the accessibility reader. That creates a shared reading interface across VoiceOver, SpeakScreen, and the newer Reader tool, which is useful because people don't all approach text the same way. Some want visual cleanup, some want spoken reading, some want granular navigation, and some want all of the above, depending on the day. If an app already implements solid, accessible text behavior, like granular navigation, continuous reading, and selection, those benefits carry into Accessibility Reader too. So the work isn't just helping one feature. It's improving the reading experience across the whole ecosystem. And after all that, the recommendation is refreshingly straightforward. Prefer system text views whenever possible. The Eyes UI text view, Swift UI's text editor, and AppKit's NST text view already come with built-in support for line, word, and character navigation, plus native text selection. That means a lot of accessibility behavior is already solved before a developer writes a single line of custom support code. Custom UI text input work should really be the fallback for situations where the app genuinely can't use native text components, like scanned images or very specialized layouts. It's a good reminder that accessibility often gets better when teams resist the urge to reinvent basic controls. Sometimes the most advanced move is using the boring thing Apple already made and letting it do its job. So the through line here is continuity. Continuous navigation between paragraphs, continuous reading across pages, and continuous access to editing and selection tools, even in custom interfaces. When text is built to behave like text, everything gets calmer, clearer, and more usable. And calm, clear software is underrated. It doesn't always win design awards, but it does let people finish the page. This episode was generated by Podkey. Create your own at podkey.fm.